We're also lucky to have Martin Peters here from Yamaha. And Martin, you come at this as an engine manufacturer, and your company has pushed to make cleaner and more efficient outboard propulsion. What effective measures have you seen that boating manufacturers can take to limit the carbon load of recreational boating?
Well, from Yamaha's perspective, one of the things that actually my colleague Jeff speaks of very well is batteries, which we're seeing being used in automobiles more and more today. The energy density of batteries is limited, certainly in cars, but when you think about the use in boats, boats require 10 times more energy to move through water than a car through the air. Therefore, they simply do not have the energy density necessary to create the kind of range that boaters expect, nor the performance for the amount of time that they have come to expect. So we look at the future as achieving carbon neutrality, and we've got to have multiple technologies, not a single technology. We can't rely specifically on batteries and electrification to get us where we need to be. Batteries and electrification will be certainly extraordinarily helpful for non-planing vessels, for vessels that aren't expected to have a whole lot of range or to run for a very long time. But we're going to have to look at a variety of technologies for other vessels. And those technologies include something that NMMA has been working very hard on over the past few years, and that Jeff Wasil has been working hard on personally. One of them is that we've got to have sustainable fuels. And sustainable fuels actually could get us to carbon neutrality quicker than electrification, if you think about it, because the boat replacement rate is about 2% compared to about 20% for cars. So if we were to introduce drop-in sustainable fuels and have boaters, have that available to boaters, we could decarbonize the 12 million boats that are currently in the fleet and do it more quickly than if we introduced electrification for all boats. It would take 40 years to turn every boat into an electrified boat, simply because the replacement rate is so low. So there are other technologies as well that we're looking at. Hydrogen has some promise for the future. One of the things that's really interesting from the perspective of public policy is that there are many states and regions, particularly on the East Coast, that are vying to become hydrogen hubs, and that would bring federal dollars to those regions. This is particularly happening in my home state of Georgia, where we have a number of members of Congress, one senator in particular, who is working very hard to establish a hydrogen hub. That would bring hydrogen to ports, particularly for us in Georgia, the ports of Savannah and Brunswick, where there's a lot of heavy shipping. So the availability of hydrogen and the practicality of hydrogen could increase because there's desire to build out the infrastructure. And that has promise for us simply because the energy density is greater. It's not as great as that of gasoline, but it's certainly greater than electrification. So these are the kinds of things that we're looking at for the future. It's definitely a multi-technology future to achieve carbon neutrality when it comes to propulsion.
Great. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Please do.
Actually, yeah, can we get, if we can grab a mic and so that the show comes into the recording.
Thank you. Yes, this is great, though. We really do want this to be an open conversation.
We should have had a lavalier for everyone who walked in the room.
Hi. Good morning, everybody. So I have a question about hydrogen fuel and lithium batteries. So we all know that lithium batteries take a lot of energy to create. What is the carbon footprint of extracting hydrogen fuel in order to have a carbon neutral output in the vessel? is it greater than or less than what is currently required to extract stuff for lithium batteries?
That's a great question. That comes back to the life cycle assessment that needs to be performed on boats, specifically for boats. Any of these technologies, whether it be hydrogen, whether it be battery electric, whether it be hydrogen with internal combustion engine or hydrogen with fuel cells, all of these various technologies introduce additional upstream CO2. And what you have to do is balance, how much additional energy do you put into producing the boat in the first place versus how often you're going to use that boat. And if you're going to produce a boat with a lot of carbon embedded, let's say you have a new fabulous hydrogen system that goes into the boat or whatever, and you're not going to use that vessel, then what you've essentially done is you front loaded 30 years worth of production into the first year of producing the boat. So you have to understand how that boat's going to be used over its lifetime to really understand for that technology. Now back to your question whether or not it depends on how the hydrogen is produced. If we're talking about hydrogen, is it produced from green energy? Is it produced from blue energy or gray energy? Gray energy, of course, being fossil fuel based, coal, natural gas versus wind energy or solar. That has a big impact in it. And likewise with the batteries as well. If you're going to produce a large electric battery pack, how is it produced? How was it mined? How was it, what was the energy sources that went into producing that battery pack? Has a huge range in terms of its embedded carbon. So, Martin talked a little bit about upstream carbon, neutrality and the rest. It's really driven by the energy that is put into producing that particular technology. So.
I'd also, at the risk of a bit of log rolling, encourage you to look at the new issue of Professional Boat Builder magazine. We have a piece on hydrogen in there that goes through some of those specifics. But I guess in brief, it seems that hydrogen has some there's technical potential for carbon reduction, but as Jeff was saying, it's very dependent on the source of your hydrogen, and how that is secured originally.
And I do want to add, the goal here for our industry is reduce and minimize CO2 emissions. That's the goal. We're not, the goal is not how do we install some, XYZ technology into all the boats. Our goal is to minimize CO2 emissions, and that's going to take a lot of different technologies. Certainly electrification is going to play an important role in that, as too is hydrogen, so too is sustainable marine fuels, advanced hull design. There's a lot of different things that are going to drive that. So.
Technologies or some applications in the marine world, since we work on both recreational, commercial, and military vessels, do see some added benefits from hybrid type power plants. You'll see those in basically tugboats is a great example, because they just need a little extra boost of power every now and again to push up against that ship, and that's where that electric battery comes into place and supports the electric motor, which also turns the drive shaft with the diesels.